This administration now has hammered Iran. They've hammered South Africa. They have hammered Ukraine. They have hammered the Houthis. But we go to Mr. Putin with our hat in hand and pretty much fall in line with what Mr. Putin wants.
Well, let's speak now to Philip Breedlove. He is a retired four-star general who was the US Supreme Allied Commander of NATO and a former Chief of Staff of the US Air Force. Hello to you.
Good morning, Adam.
I want to ask you, first of all, whether you think this is going to be the limit to US military involvement in Iran.
Well, I can offer you my opinion. I can't offer you. But the bottom line is the president has been very clear that he wants now to get about peace. I don't think that the president wants continued strikes. He is very clear, however, as are others, that if now Iran begins to strike U.S. soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines across the Middle East, that there will be more.
And would you expect that there would be retaliation by Iran? Certainly what we've heard so far is not talking about seeking talks.
No, I completely agree. The preliminary words coming out of Iran are probably what you would expect. They want revenge and retribution, and so one would hope that cooler heads will prevail and that this will work its way out. But I think that Iran is in a very tough place. Another nation holds air superiority over much of the country of Iran. They are feeling the absolute capability of air power in an environment where the enemy holds your airspace in their hands. And we're paying a lot of attention to the strikes on the 3 nuclear bases, but what is not playing out quite so much as all the other strikes which are systematically disassembling the military capability of Iran.
Tell us from your perspective of having been Chief of Staff of the Air Force, just of the complexities of this operation. The President has made the point that only the US military could have achieved this.
Well, first of all, I was the Vice Chief of Staff of the U.S. Air Force. Before that, I was the Chief Operator of the Air Force. So,
well, you know a lot about it.
So the bottom line, this is very complicated. The B-2 is an incredibly stealthy capability, but we don't put the B-2 out there at risk willy-nilly. And so there are a lot of supporting actors to get the B-2 to the target and ensure that it gets home. And they did, and the system worked. The second thing is, I'll use a word that your listeners may not be terribly familiar with, but the weaponeering of how you strike a target like this is also not trivial. It is incredibly important exactly where you hit, how you hit. The delivery parameters of the weapon make a big difference. And so considering how we're going to try to root this cancer out from under the ground is not trivial. And so this whole operation, I think, what we see reflected, I think there may be some preliminary celebration about how much success we had, but what we appears to absolutely have happened is the attack went exactly as planned. The weaponeering was accomplished and the weapon functioned as we expected. And now we have to spend some time across the next days and weeks figuring out just how much actual damage we did.
Now, we're not clear if there was enhanced uranium present, but what about the impact of dropping a very powerful bomb on top of enhanced uranium? Couldn't that have triggered a nuclear explosion?
No.
Why not?
You're much more concerned about the release of the fallout of scattering and destroying nuclear material in an instance like this. The triggering of an explosion is a very delicate thing, and warheads are designed to make that miracle happen. But I would just tell you the likelihood of triggering a nuclear explosion is essentially nil.
I just want to ask you a strategic question. It seems to me that here we have a president who has said that he's risk averse. He doesn't like the use of force, yet he's used force. And it seems to me that perhaps we are now seeing the Trump administration more in line with the traditional attitudes and goals of the NATO allies. Would you agree with that?
Well, I don't know that I would generalize it quite like that, but what we are seeing is that in certain cases, this president and this administration is willing to step up to the task of using force. I would point out that in other situations, they absolutely have not. It still stymies many of us how deferential this administration is to Mr. Putin, and how adverse we are to challenging Mr. Putin. This administration now has hammered Iran. They've hammered South Africa. They have hammered Ukraine. They have hammered the Houthis. But we go to Mr. Putin with our hat in hand and pretty much fall in line with what Mr. Putin wants.
So you're still worried, really, about the overall security posture of the administration?
I am concerned about Europe. There is a theater level war going on in Europe. This World War I and World War II both started from much, much, much smaller circumstances. We have a theater level war going on right now in Europe, and I'm not sure that we in the West nor we in Washington have come to grips with that.
And that, of course, is what they've got to talk about in The Hague this week at the NATO summit.
Of course. As we all understand now, it's going to be a much abbreviated sort of summit to try to get to good conclusions with the American president. And I sure wish all success, including the American president. We have 32 nations. America's one of those 32. And we're hoping more than anything else that we come out of that summit with unity, with a common forward approach to the problems we see in Russia. Russia is an enemy. It is not a partner, and it has to be dealt with like an enemy, not a partner.